Emma Carter walked into Houston General Hospital, the soft squeak of her worn sneakers echoing against the pristine tile floors. The vast corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, lined with advanced medical equipment that hummed faintly in the background. Despite the state-of-the-art surroundings, there was a palpable sense of emptiness. This was not the bustling part of the hospital. It was quieter, almost unnervingly so, reserved for high-profile patients who demanded privacy. Emma had worked in hospitals for years, but this assignment felt different. A nurse by trade, she was no stranger to the gravity of illness. Yet the circumstances surrounding her new patient, Logan Montgomery, carried an inexplicable weight. Logan wasn't just any patient. He was a name everyone in Houston knew. The tech prodigy turned billionaire, heir to a sprawling empire. And now the man who had spent a year in a coma following a mysterious car accident. The private wing where Logan was kept felt more like a futuristic sanctuary than a hospital. A panel outside his room displayed a constant stream of vital statistics. The sterile smell of disinfectant mingled with the faint hum of monitors and machines, each ensuring Logan's survival. The only sign of life came from the machines themselves, their rhythmic beeping creating a strange harmony in the stillness. Emma hesitated at the threshold of his room. She had read the file. Logan was 32, in peak health before the accident, with no significant pre-existing conditions. No witnesses to the crash. No clear answers. She was used to taking care of critically ill patients, but Logan's situation was far from typical. Peering through the large glass window, she observed him. His face, unmarred by the accident, seemed peaceful, as though he were merely sleeping. Thick, dark lashes framed his closed eyes, and his sharp jawline was softened by the faintest stubble. It was difficult to reconcile the man lying motionless with the powerful figure she'd seen in magazine covers and business articles. Taking a deep breath, Emma entered the room. She set her bag on the chair in the corner and began her routine checks. Her hands moved automatically, trained and steady, but her mind churned. Something about the silence unsettled her. It wasn't just the absence of visitors or the isolation of the ward. It was the eerie sensation that the room held secrets no one dared to speak. As Emma adjusted the foredrip, she felt a prickling at the back of her neck, a strange awareness she couldn't shake. The machines beeped on, oblivious to her unease, as though the room itself was waiting. Emma Carter's small apartment was a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of the Montgomery Estate's private hospital wing. A sagging couch, a few mismatched chairs, and a table cluttered with unpaid bills told the story of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. Her brother, Alex, sat at the kitchen counter, headphones on, his fingers flying across a laptop keyboard. At 16, Alex was a quiet, tech-savvy kid with dreams bigger than their circumstances could easily support. "Any luck with that new job?" Alex asked, pulling off his headphones. Emma sighed as she tossed her hospital scrubs into the laundry basket. "It's something, at least. The patient's wealthy, private wing, all the high-tech gear you can imagine. But I don't know. Something about him feels heavy, like there's more to the story than they're letting on." Alex nodded but didn't pry. They had enough problems of their own, from overdue rent to his college ambitions that seemed further away with every passing day. Emma took the job because they needed the money, but part of her felt a strange pull toward this new role, as if it were about more than just a paycheck. The next morning, Emma returned to Logan Montgomery's room. The hum of the machines greeted her, steady as ever. She pulled up a chair beside his bed and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You don't know me, Mr. Montgomery," she began softly, "and I doubt you can hear me, but I'll be spending a lot of time here. So, maybe talking will help both of us." She told him small things at first, about her brother's knack for fixing anything electronic, how she missed baking with her mom before the fire that took her parents. Her voice filled the room like a gentle balm, weaving through the cold machinery with warmth and sincerity. Rumors about the Montgomery family came to mind. There were whispers of boardroom disputes and power plays within the company, and Emma wondered how much of Logan's isolation was due to the accident and how much was orchestrated by those around him. As Emma reached to adjust the monitor, a flicker caught her eye. The machine tracking Logan's brain activity registered a faint change, just a blip. She froze, heart pounding, unsure if it was real or a trick of the light. Then the machine beeped again, ever so slightly different. A small spark of hope lit within her. "Maybe you are listening," she whispered. Emma arrived at the Montgomery estate under a clouded sky. The massive iron gates creaked open after a brief scan of her credentials, revealing a winding driveway bordered by manicured lawns and towering oaks. At the end of the path stood the mansion itself, a sprawling structure of glass and stone, cold and imposing against the gray horizon. The grandeur of the estate was undeniable, but it lacked warmth. Stepping inside, Emma was greeted by a cavernous foyer dominated by polished marble floors, high ceilings, and minimalist decor. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something artificial, perhaps the sterile residue of the high-tech systems humming quietly in the background. She followed a staff member through the labyrinth of hallways, passing rooms equipped with the latest in automation. Lights that adjusted themselves, walls that displayed virtual artwork at a touch, and a kitchen with sleek appliances that seemed more suited to a spaceship than a home. Yet, for all its luxury, the mansion felt strangely empty, as though no one truly lived there. Emma was ushered into a large sitting room where Ethan Ward, Logan's business partner, awaited her. He was tall and sharply dressed, his smile as polished as his Italian leather shoes. "Miss Carter," he greeted, extending a hand. His grip was firm but not warm, a calculated show of control. "I've heard good things about your work with Logan." "Thank you," Emma replied cautiously. Ethan gestured for her to sit. "We've taken every measure to ensure Logan's comfort and recovery, as I'm sure you've seen. But I hope you understand the sensitivity of his situation, both medically and otherwise." Emma nodded, unsure what he was implying. "Of course." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, as though weighing her words. "Good. Logan's health is our priority, but so is discretion. I trust you'll keep everything you observe here strictly professional." There was an edge to his tone that made Emma's skin prickle. Before she could respond, their conversation was interrupted by Alex's voice over her phone, which she had forgotten to silence. "Emma, check this out," he exclaimed. "I've been reading about the mansion's security system. Did you know it's—" Emma quickly muted the call, embarrassed. Ethan's brow lifted slightly, amusement flickering in his otherwise unreadable expression. As Emma left the room, she couldn't shake the unease Ethan's presence had stirred. The mansion's cold technology mirrored the demeanor of the people running it, efficient, impenetrable, and hiding something beneath its gleaming surface. Emma returned to the Montgomery mansion the next day, now more familiar with its imposing walls and silent halls. As she moved through the corridors toward Logan's private suite, she encountered a few of the household staff. Their hushed voices and guarded expressions hinted at the tension lingering in the estate. One of the maids, a middle-aged woman named Carla, paused to offer Emma a kind smile. "You're the nurse for Mr. Montgomery, right? He's lucky to have someone like you looking after him," she said, her voice warm but tinged with apprehension. "Thank you," Emma replied, sensing Carla wanted to say more. "He seems well cared for." Carla hesitated, glancing over her shoulder before leaning closer. "We all want the best for him," she whispered, "but not everyone here does. Be careful who you trust." The cryptic warning hung in the air as Carla quickly returned to her duties. Emma tried to push the comment aside as she entered Logan's room, but the unease lingered. Inside, Logan lay as still as ever, though the machines showed subtle signs of improvement. His vitals were stable, his condition steady. Yet, as Emma checked the monitors and adjusted his foredrip, her gaze landed on a new object on the side table, a sleek, expensive wristwatch. It hadn't been there before. The watch gleamed under the room's soft lighting, its face illuminated by a faint digital glow. Emma picked it up, examining it closely. The design was intricate, with a small display showing what appeared to be a string of numbers. 9 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds. At first, Emma thought it was the time, but the numbers didn't change. It wasn't a countdown or a stopwatch either. She turned it over, searching for clues, and noticed an engraving on the underside. "Trust no one." Her heart skipped. The message was ominous, and the presence of the watch itself felt deliberate. Who had left it here? And why? Later that day, as Emma made her way out, She passed Dr. Grayson, one of Logan's primary physicians. The usually composed doctor seemed distracted, his face tight with concern. "Is something wrong?" Emma asked. Dr. Grayson paused. "There's tension. The board isn't happy with the expenses of keeping Mr. Montgomery here, and Ethan Ward is pushing for a different approach. Just keep an eye on things." Emma nodded, her mind racing. Between Carla's warning, the watch, and Dr. Grayson's subtle hint, the threads of a deeper mystery began to pull tight around her. She glanced back at Logan's room, feeling the weight of secrets pressing closer. The hum of machines and the soft glow of monitors filled Logan Montgomery's private room. Emma sat by the window, her clipboard in hand, scribbling notes about his vitals. Outside, the moon hung low, casting pale light through the large glass panes. It was the stillest hour of the night, a time when even the air felt heavier. The sharp, erratic beep of a monitor jolted Emma from her thoughts. She glanced up, expecting to find a minor shift in Logan's readings, but what she saw made her heart race. His fingers twitched, ever so slightly, against the crisp white sheet. Emma froze, unsure if she had imagined it. Then it happened again, a small, deliberate movement. Her instincts kicked in. She was by his side in moments, checking his pulse, scanning his vitals. "Logan," she called softly, her voice steady despite the sudden rush of adrenaline. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his eyelids fluttered, his lashes casting faint shadows against his pale cheeks. His head shifted slightly on the pillow, and with a low, ragged inhale, his eyes opened. The vivid green of his gaze was striking even in his disoriented state. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings before landing on Emma. There was confusion there, raw and palpable, mingled with something deeper, fear. "Mr. Montgomery," Emma said gently, leaning closer to meet his gaze. "You're in the hospital. You've been in an accident, but you're safe now." Logan's lips parted, but his voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "What happened?" "You've been unconscious for some time," she explained, keeping her tone calm. "Let me call the doctor. Everything's going to be okay." As Emma reached for the call button, Logan's hand shot out, weak but desperate, gripping her wrist. His touch startled her. His eyes, now locked on hers, were wide with a fear she couldn't place. "Don't let them." His voice broke, but the urgency in his tone was unmistakable. "Don't let who?" Emma asked, but his grip slackened as his strength faded. The room filled with motion as the medical team rushed in. Dr. Grayson took charge, barking orders as nurses adjusted the monitors and checked Logan's vitals. Emma stepped back, her heart still pounding. From the corner of the room, she caught Logan's gaze once more before his eyes fluttered shut. The fear in them lingered, seared into her mind. Whatever he remembered, it was enough to terrify him. Emma's day began as most others, with a quiet walk through the mansion's sterile halls. But today, an air of unease clung to the corridors, subtle yet suffocating. She barely had time to settle into her routine before being summoned to a small conference room near Logan's wing. Ethan Ward was waiting for her, standing by a long glass table. His sharp suit and practiced smile gave off an air of control, but the tension in his posture hinted at something deeper. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone polite but clipped. "Thank you for coming. There's a matter we need to address." Emma straightened. "Of course. What's this about?" Ethan gestured toward a chair, but she remained standing. His smile faded slightly. "We've noticed that an item of Mr. Montgomery's, an extremely valuable watch, was removed from his room. It's concerning, given your recent access." The accusation hit her like a slap. Emma's mouth opened, but it took a moment before her voice emerged, steady and firm. "I didn't take anything. The watch was already there when I noticed it yesterday. I even reported it to Dr. Grayson." Ethan tilted his head, the practiced suspicion in his eyes unnerving. "A watch with strange engravings and a digital display that caught your attention. Curious, isn't it?" Emma's brows furrowed. "If you already know about it, why are you asking me? And what do you mean by strange engravings? Are you saying the watch wasn't Mr. Montgomery's?" His smirk returned, colder now. "That's for us to determine. But understand this, Miss Carter, Discretion is crucial in this household. Mr. Montgomery's reputation and recovery depend on it. Emma clenched her fists, holding back the retort bubbling inside. If you're implying I'm a threat to either, you're mistaken. I'm here to do my job and help him recover. The conversation ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving Emma's nerves frayed. Later that evening, she returned to Logan's side. His eyes, half-lidded with exhaustion, met hers. Despite his fragility, he managed a faint, reassuring smile. "You didn't take it," Logan rasped, his voice weak but resolute. Emma froze, surprised. "How do you know?" "I just do," he whispered. "Help me, Emma. I need to know what really happened." His plea carried a weight that went beyond his words. Emma felt it, the enormity of what he was asking and the trust he was placing in her. The answers he sought weren't just for him. They were keys to unraveling the secrets that haunted the mansion. Logan's dreams were fragments of chaos, a twisted amalgamation of sound, light, and fear. He saw the gleaming hood of his car crumpling on impact, headlights slicing through darkness, and a shadowed figure standing in the distance, just out of focus. The face remained hidden, but the presence was chilling, sending a surge of panic through his subconscious. He awoke with a start, his breathing labored, the beeping of the monitor syncing with his rapid pulse. Emma, who had been reviewing his chart, rushed to his side. "Logan, are you okay?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with concern. He nodded weakly, wiping sweat from his brow. I saw something," he muttered. "The accident. Pieces of it. But it doesn't make sense. What do you remember?" Emma pressed gently, pulling a chair closer. "A figure," Logan said, his voice hoarse, "standing there, watching. They didn't help. They just stood there." Emma frowned but didn't push further. "Rest for now. We'll figure it out." Later that day, back in her small apartment, Emma relayed Logan's fragmented memories to Alex. Her brother sat at the cluttered kitchen table, his laptop humming as he sifted through publicly available records on Montgomery Industries. "Something feels off about this," Alex said, scrolling through pages of data. The timing of his accident, the internal shakeups at the company. It all lines up too perfectly. "What do you mean?" Emma asked, leaning over his shoulder. "Look," Alex said, pointing to a list of transactions. "There's a pattern. Large sums of money funneled out of subsidiary accounts just before Logan's accident. Whoever did this wasn't trying to hide it well, or they didn't expect anyone to notice." Emma's stomach tightened. Could this connect to Ethan? Alex shrugged. "Could be, or someone higher up. But if Logan's memory is right and someone was there at the scene..." Back at the mansion, Logan found himself face to face with Ethan for the first time since waking. Despite his weakened state, he had insisted on attending a video call with the board of directors. Ethan, as polished as ever, seemed both surprised and annoyed by Logan's insistence. "Logan," Ethan said, his tone dripping with feigned concern, "you should focus on recovery. We're handling everything just fine here." Logan's jaw tightened. "Handling it by cutting deals behind my back?" The air in the room grew heavy. Ethan's smile faltered for just a second, a flicker of irritation breaking his composed exterior. "I don't think you're in any condition to make accusations," Ethan replied smoothly. Logan held his gaze. "I'll decide what condition I'm in. Don't underestimate me." After the call ended, Logan reclined in his chair, his body weary but his mind racing. Every interaction with Ethan only deepened his suspicion. He was certain now. Someone wanted him out of the picture, and the closer he got to the truth, the more dangerous it felt. The glow of the bedside lamp cast a soft, golden light across Logan's room. It was late, the house quiet except for the rhythmic hum of the machines monitoring Logan's fragile recovery. Emma sat near his bed, scrolling through notes on her tablet, but her mind was elsewhere, troubled by the growing web of secrets surrounding Logan's accident. "Long day," Logan's voice, though still raspy, cut through the silence. Emma looked up, startled. "You could say that," she replied with a faint smile. "What about you? Feeling any better?" Logan gave a weak chuckle, shifting slightly on the bed. "Define better. Breathing feels like a marathon. But at least I'm alive." There was a pause, a moment where the weight of his words lingered between them. Emma set the tablet aside, her professional facade softening. "You're doing better than you think," she said earnestly. "I've seen people give up with less. You're fighting, even if it doesn't feel like it." Logan studied her for a moment, his green eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. "You sound like you know a lot about fighting." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "I've had to. Life hasn't exactly been easy. My brother and we've had to figure out how to keep going, even when it feels impossible." Logan's brow furrowed. "Your brother?" "Alex," she explained. "He's 16, a tech wizard, and way too curious for his own good. He's been helping me dig into some things. He doesn't know everything, but he's sharp. Maybe sharper than me." Logan smiled faintly. "Sounds like he takes after you." Emma let out a soft laugh. "I'll take that as a compliment." For a moment, the tension in the room lifted. Logan's eyes softened, his guarded demeanor giving way to vulnerability. "You know," he began, his voice quieter now, "it's hard trusting people, especially after." He trailed off, unable to finish. "You don't have to explain," Emma said gently. "But you can trust me, Logan. I don't know what's going on yet, but I'll help you figure it out. You're not alone in this." Logan's gaze held hers, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. An understanding, a connection. "Thank you," he murmured. Meanwhile, across town, Alex hunched over his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys. His screen displayed lines of code, a digital trail he'd pieced together over hours of digging. He paused, staring at a suspicious transaction tied to one of Ethan's shell companies. "This isn't just mismanagement," Alex muttered to himself. "This is sabotage." The next morning, Logan made a decision. His body felt weak, but his resolve was stronger than ever. "Schedule the meeting with the directors," he told Emma. "You sure you're ready?" she asked, concern evident. "I have to be," Logan replied. "If I wait, Ethan will destroy everything." For the first time in weeks, there was fire in his voice, a determination that gave Emma hope. The boardroom was a testament to the Montgomery Empire's wealth and power. Dark mahogany walls, sleek leather chairs, and a panoramic view of Houston's skyline set the stage for high-stakes decision-making. Logan, seated at the head of the table, exuded determination, but his pale complexion and the strain in his posture betrayed his fragile condition. Emma lingered near the doorway, out of place but unable to leave. She had been drawn into this world by circumstance, and now she couldn't turn away. Not when it was clear how much Logan needed someone in his corner. "Logan," Ethan began, his voice smooth and condescending. "We all admire your resilience in coming back after such a traumatic event. But perhaps it's too soon to assume such a demanding role." The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement from a few board members. "I'm more than capable," Logan countered, his voice firm despite the rasp that lingered in his throat. "And this is still my company." Ethan leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "We're not questioning your abilities, only your readiness. The company needs steady leadership, and in your absence, I've ensured that everything has remained stable." Emma's fists clenched at Ethan's patronizing tone. It was clear he was positioning himself as the de facto leader while subtly undermining Logan. Logan's eyes narrowed. "Stable? You call questionable transactions and stalled project stability?" "I've seen the reports, Ethan. I know what you've been doing." The tension in the room was palpable. Ethan's mask of composure faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly. "Accusations without proof won't help anyone," he said, his voice cold. As the meeting dragged on, Emma watched Logan grow visibly weaker. His hand trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the table, and she could see the effort it took for him to keep his focus. She fought the urge to intervene, knowing it wasn't her place, yet every instinct told her he needed help. After the meeting adjourned, Emma caught Logan in the corridor. He leaned heavily against the wall, his breath labored. "You need to rest," she urged. "I can't," he replied, his frustration evident. "They're circling like vultures. If I don't fight back now, I'll lose everything." Emma hesitated. "You don't have to do it alone." Logan met her eyes, his exhaustion softening into gratitude. "I know. he said quietly. That evening, as Emma scrolled through her phone, a headline caught her eye. Montgomery Air's competence questioned amid health concerns. Her heart sank as she read the article, which speculated on Logan's ability to lead after his accident. The timing was no coincidence. This was a calculated move, and Emma knew exactly who was behind it. She glanced toward Logan's room, where he rested fitfully. The battle ahead would be harder than she had imagined. The air in the Montgomery mansion felt heavier than usual as Emma returned from her evening break. The soft murmur of distant conversations was swallowed by the vastness of the halls, and as she rounded the corner near Logan's room, a voice stopped her in her tracks. "Miss Carter," Ethan called, his tone disarmingly pleasant. Emma turned slowly, masking her unease. Ethan stood with his usual composed demeanor, his hands casually in his pockets, but his sharp eyes betrayed his true intent. "I wanted a word," he continued, stepping closer, "about your involvement here." Emma straightened, her pulse quickening. "If it's about Logan's care, I can assure you I'm doing my job to the best of my ability." Ethan chuckled lightly, though it lacked warmth. "Oh, I don't doubt your dedication, but dedication can sometimes blur boundaries. It's important to remember your place, Miss Carter." Her stomach twisted, but she refused to flinch. "My place is taking care of Logan. If that's a problem, you should take it up with his doctors." Ethan's expression hardened, though his tone remained measured. "Logan's well-being is paramount, of course, but stepping too far outside your role could have unintended consequences." The weight of his words settled over her like a storm cloud, and before she could respond, Ethan turned and walked away, leaving a faint chill in his wake. Later that night, Emma sat in her apartment, her hands trembling as she relayed the encounter to Alex. "You have to be careful," Alex said, his brow furrowed as he typed furiously on his laptop. "That guy is bad news, and I think I just found proof." "What do you mean?" Emma asked, leaning over his shoulder. Alex pointed to his screen, where a series of encrypted emails flickered. These were buried in one of the company's financial servers. "It looks like transactions tied to Ethan, but there's another name attached. Someone in the Montgomery family." Emma's heart sank. "Another family member?" "I'm trying to decrypt it, but it'll take time," Alex replied, his voice tense. "If we can figure out who it is, we might finally get some answers." Back at the mansion, Emma's composure finally cracked. As she sat by Logan's bedside, the fear and pressure became too much. Silent tears slipped down her cheeks, and she clenched her hands tightly to stop the trembling. Logan stirred, his voice hoarse but steady. "Emma, what's wrong?" She shook her head, trying to brush it off, but he reached out, his hand weak but resolute as it covered hers. "Talk to me," he urged softly, his green eyes filled with genuine concern. Emma hesitated before whispering, "I'm scared. Of Ethan. Of everything." Logan squeezed her hand, his touch grounding her. "You're not alone in this," he said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." For a moment, their shared vulnerability filled the room. A quiet bond forged in trust and unspoken understanding. Logan, watching Emma's raw honesty, realized something he hadn't felt in years. Someone truly cared for him. Not his wealth, but for him. The warm glow of Alex's laptop screen illuminated the small kitchen table in Emma's apartment, casting shadows on the papers spread across the surface. Logan sat across from Alex, his body still frail but his mind sharp. Emma hovered nearby, the tension in the room thick but occasionally broken by Alex's muttered frustrations as he scrolled through lines of encrypted data. "So, this secret fund," Logan said, his voice gravelly but focused. "You're saying it's connected to the transactions you found earlier?" Alex nodded, pushing his glasses higher on his nose. "Exactly. These transfers were hidden in subsidiary accounts, labeled as operational costs. But when you dig deeper, they lead to a fund that doesn't exist in the company's official records. Someone's been funneling money out." Emma leaned over the table, her brow furrowed. "Could it be Ethan? Or someone working with him?" "Probably both," Alex replied. "But the weird part is, the amounts match up almost perfectly with the dates around your accident, Logan. Whatever they're funding, it's tied to what happened to you." Logan exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping against the edge of the table. We need more proof. If I go to the board with just this, Ethan will spin it against me. We need something concrete. The atmosphere grew heavy again as they all absorbed the implications. Then Alex, in his typical way, broke the tension with a smirk. You know, for a billionaire, your company's security is surprisingly easy to crack. You might want to look into that. Emma laughed, shaking her head. Alex, I don't think now's the time to critique his IT department. Logan managed a faint smile. Remind me to hire you after this is over. If you can outsmart our system, maybe you can improve it. The moment of levity was short-lived when Logan's phone buzzed. Emma glanced at it before handing it to him. It's from Carla, she said, recognizing the name of one of the mansion's longtime staff. Logan answered, his voice cautious. Carla? Mr. Montgomery, she whispered, her tone urgent. I've been meaning to tell you. I saw something the night of your accident. I was too scared before, but I can't stay quiet anymore. Logan stiffened. What did you see? There was someone in the garage before you left that night. A man I didn't recognize. He was arguing with someone, and then you drove off. I think it was Ethan. Logan's grip on the phone tightened. Are you sure? Yes, Carla replied. I'll tell you everything I know, but not here. I don't trust the house anymore. As the call ended, Logan's jaw clenched. She's risking a lot to tell me this, he said. Emma nodded, her heart racing. Then we need to make sure it's worth it. Whatever she knows could be the key to bringing Ethan down. The stakes had never felt higher, but for the first time, they had a clear direction and an ally willing to help uncover the truth. Logan sat in his study at the mansion, the air around him tense with anticipation. Carla had just handed him a small USB drive, her hands trembling as she spoke. This is what I could recover from the watch, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what it was until now, but it might help you. Emma stood nearby, her pulse quickening as Logan inserted the drive into his laptop. The screen displayed a single file, labeled with nothing but a timestamp, 22 hours, 43 minutes, and 12 seconds. What's on it? Emma asked, her voice cautious. We're about to find out, Logan murmured, his finger hovering over the play button. When the audio began, the room fell silent. At first, it was faint, a rustle, footsteps, and the muffled sound of distant voices. Then, clearer words emerged. You're sure this will work? A man's voice asked. It has to, another voice replied, sharper and more familiar. Emma's eyes darted to Logan, whose expression had gone rigid. The voice was unmistakable. Ethan, Logan whispered, his jaw tightening. In the recording, Ethan's tone turned icy. He's outlived his usefulness. We need him gone. Tonight. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The words were damning, chilling in their intent. But then another voice entered the recording, a female voice, hesitant yet complicit. And you're certain no one will trace this back to us? Logan's face went pale, his breathing shallow. No, he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. It can't be. Who is it? Emma asked, stepping closer. Logan didn't answer, his focus fixed on the screen. The voice was familiar to him in a way that cut deeper than Ethan's. It was Samantha, his own sister. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, and his body slumped against the desk. Emma rushed to his side, her hands steadying him as his breath grew more ragged. Logan, look at me, she said, her voice firm but laced with worry. You need to breathe. Focus on my voice. He nodded weakly, following her instructions as she guided him to the nearest chair. His eyes were glassy, his mind racing with betrayal. I never thought, Logan began, his voice breaking. Samantha? Why? Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll figure it out. But right now, you need to rest. Later, when Logan had been stabilized and was asleep, Emma returned to the study and played the recording again. She listened intently, her stomach twisting with every word. The weight of the revelation settled over her, and for the first time, she felt truly afraid, not just for Logan, but for all of them. Whatever they had uncovered was bigger than they had imagined, and the danger was closer than any of them had realized. The evening was unusually quiet in the mansion, the tension of the past days lingering but temporarily subdued. Emma sat by the window in Logan's room, watching the faint glow of city lights on the horizon. Logan was propped up in bed, a faint flush of color returning to his face after the stress of the day's revelations. "You don't have to stay here all night, you know," Logan said softly, his voice still carrying the weight of exhaustion. Emma turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "And leave you to brood over everything alone? Not a chance." Logan chuckled faintly, the sound genuine despite his fatigue. "I've been told I'm excellent company for brooding." Emma moved closer, pulling a chair beside his bed. "You don't have to do it alone, Logan. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." The sincerity in her voice struck him, and for a moment, Logan allowed himself to let his guard down. "I'm not used to that," he admitted. "Having someone to rely on." Emma tilted her head, her gaze steady. "Maybe it's time to start. You've been through more than anyone should handle alone." Their eyes met, the unspoken understanding between them deepening. Logan reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against hers. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of trust, a vulnerability he rarely showed. "You're more than just a nurse, Emma," he said, his voice low. "You're different. You see things in people, even when they don't see them in themselves." Emma felt her cheeks warm, but she held his gaze. "And you're more than just a name in headlines. There's a strength in you, Logan, even if you don't see it right now." The moment lingered, a fragile yet profound connection forming between them. Emma finally broke the silence with a soft laugh. "If this is your way of convincing me to keep staying up late to check on you, it's working." Logan smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Then I'll consider it my first victory in a long time." Elsewhere, Alex sat at his desk, his laptop glowing in the dim light. He leaned closer, deciphering another encrypted message when his phone buzzed. The message was short but chilling. "Stop digging, or we'll stop you." Alex's hands trembled as he read the words. He quickly messaged Emma, his fear evident in the shaky text. When Emma read it, her heart sank. She shared the message with Logan, who sat upright, his jaw tightening. "They're trying to scare him off," Logan said. "But they don't realize Alex is braver than they think." Emma nodded, placing a comforting hand on Logan's arm. "We'll protect him. All of us." For the first time, it became clear. They weren't just allies in uncovering the truth. They were becoming something closer, a makeshift family bound by trust and shared purpose, even as danger loomed just outside the door. Alex's laptop sat in the center of the kitchen table, the screen displaying a series of decrypted emails. The tension in the room was palpable as Emma and Logan stood behind him, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of the monitor. Alex leaned back, his expression grim. "This is it," Alex said, pointing to the screen. "These emails, they're direct communications between Ethan and Samantha." "Look." Logan stepped closer, his breath catching as he read the messages. Ethan's words were cold and calculating, detailing plans to manipulate company assets and undermine Logan's authority. Samantha's responses were more hesitant, but her complicity was undeniable. "Ethan, he won't see it coming. Once the board votes, he'll be out permanently." Alex read aloud, his voice steady but low. "Samantha, this is risky, Ethan. If anyone finds out, it's both of us." Logan's face drained of color as the truth settled over him. He sank into a chair, his hands trembling slightly as he scrolled through the damning correspondence. "Samantha, my own sister," he murmured. "How could she?" Emma knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Logan, I'm so sorry," she said softly. "I can't imagine how this feels, but you need to know this doesn't define you. Their betrayal isn't your fault." Logan's eyes glistened, and for a moment, he looked completely undone. "I trusted her," he said, his voice cracking. "She's family. She was supposed to have my back, not this." Emma squeezed his arm, her presence steadying him. "Family isn't just blood, Logan. It's the people who stand by you, no matter what. Alex and I, we're here. We'll get through this together." Logan nodded, swallowing hard. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "You're right," he said finally, his voice firmer. This isn't over. They won't win. What do we do now? Alex asked, his fingers still hovering over the keyboard. Logan straightened, his resolve returning. We expose them, but we do it carefully. We need to gather more evidence and present it in a way they can't refute. This isn't just about me. It's about protecting the company and everyone depending on it. Emma stood, her eyes meeting Logan's. And how do we do that without putting ourselves at risk? Logan looked thoughtful, his mind racing. We don't act alone. We find allies, people on the board who are loyal, staff who've seen things they were too afraid to report. We make sure Ethan and Samantha have nowhere to hide. The weight of the task ahead was immense, but for the first time, Logan felt a spark of hope. Surrounded by Emma's quiet strength and Alex's determination, he knew they had a chance, not just to uncover the truth, but to reclaim everything he'd lost. We start now, Logan said, his voice steady. This ends with the truth. The weight of their discovery hung over Emma and Logan as they worked late into the night, sorting through the evidence Alex had uncovered. The room was dimly lit, the glow of Logan's laptop casting long shadows as emails, financial records, and encrypted files were compiled into a damning case. This is solid, Logan said, scrolling through the organized folder. But getting it into the right hands won't be easy. Ethan's reach goes far, farther than I realized. Emma glanced up from her seat across the table, her expression serious. What do you mean? Logan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. He has connections in local law enforcement. If we're not careful, any report we make could disappear. Or worse, get us into trouble. Emma's stomach sank. So what do we do? We can't just sit on this. We go higher, Logan replied. Federal oversight, independent investigators. People Ethan can't control. But first, we need to make sure our evidence is airtight. Their conversation was interrupted by the chime of Emma's phone. It was Alex, his voice hurried and laced with unease. Emma, where are you? He asked. I'm just leaving the hospital, she replied, grabbing her bag. Why? There's a black SUV parked near the building, Alex said. It was outside the apartment earlier, too. I think someone's watching us. Emma's heart raced as she glanced out the hospital's glass doors. Sure enough, a dark SUV sat idling across the street, its windows tinted. Stay on the phone, Alex urged. If they follow you, get somewhere crowded. Emma stepped into the cool night air, trying to appear calm as she walked to her car. The SUV didn't move until she pulled onto the main road. When it did, her suspicions were confirmed. It was following her. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel as she navigated through the city streets, her pulse pounding in her ears. They're following me, Emma said, her voice tight. Take a detour, Alex suggested. Go through downtown. More traffic, more witnesses. Emma swerved onto a busier street, weaving between cars as the SUV stayed close behind. She caught her breath when she spotted a crowded parking lot near a 24-hour diner. She pulled in quickly, parking near the entrance. The SUV hesitated, idling briefly before driving away. Emma exhaled shakily, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. You okay? Alex asked. Yeah, Emma said, though her voice wavered. I'm okay. Back at the mansion, Alex tried to lighten the mood as Emma recounted the ordeal. I never thought uncovering the truth would turn into a real-life spy movie, he said with a wry grin. Logan didn't smile. His jaw tightened, his voice low and resolute. This isn't a movie. This is my life. And now it's yours too. We need to be smarter, faster. Because they're not going to stop. The stakes had officially risen, and the battle ahead was more dangerous than any of them had anticipated. The Montgomery boardroom was quieter than usual, but the atmosphere bristled with unspoken tension. Logan sat at the head of the table, flanked by a few key allies he had carefully chosen from within the company. The remaining seats, empty for now, symbolized the lingering uncertainty surrounding the others who hadn't yet earned his trust. Logan glanced at Emma, who stood near the door, her presence a steady reassurance. He took a deep breath and addressed the group. What we're about to discuss doesn't leave this room, Logan began, his tone firm but controlled. The evidence I've gathered implicates Ethan Ward in actions that threaten not only this company but its employees and stakeholders. He connected his laptop to the room screen and began presenting the files Alex had decrypted. The board members leaned in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to shock as Logan walked them through the financial discrepancies, secret communications, and damning timelines. "This isn't just mismanagement," Logan said, pointing to an email exchange between Ethan and Samantha. "This is deliberate sabotage, executed under the guise of leadership." One of the allies, a senior board member named Helen, frowned deeply. "This is serious, Logan. But confronting Ethan won't be simple. He has influence, even beyond the company." "I understand the risk," Logan replied, his voice unwavering. "But I won't let him destroy what my family built. And I won't let him hurt anyone else in the process." Emma observed quietly, her heart pounding. Every step forward seemed to place her and Alex closer to the line of fire. Yet, she knew there was no turning back. Their safety depended on Logan's success, and on her resolve to see it through. That evening, back at the mansion, Emma and Logan were reviewing the next steps when Logan's phone buzzed. The message was encrypted, but the sender's name froze him in place: Samantha Montgomery. He hesitated before opening it, his jaw tightening as he read the text aloud. "I need to talk. I was wrong about Ethan. Meet me tomorrow, alone. I'll explain everything." Emma frowned, her instinct screaming against the idea. "Logan, it's a trap. You can't trust her, not after what we've seen." "She's my sister," Logan said, his voice torn between anger and desperation. "If there's even a chance she's telling the truth." Emma placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. "Then we plan for it. We don't go in blind." Logan nodded, though his expression remained conflicted. "We'll prepare," he said. "But if she's being honest, this could be the break we need to stop Ethan for good." The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. Trusting Samantha could lead to answers, or betrayal. Either way, it was a risk they couldn't avoid. The cafe Logan chose for the meeting was busy, filled with the hum of quiet conversations and the clinking of cups. It was a strategic choice, public enough to deter overt aggression, but intimate enough for the weight of the discussion. Emma sat beside him at a corner table, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of trouble. Samantha arrived moments later, her once confident demeanor replaced by nervous glances and slouched shoulders. Dressed in a simple trench coat and sunglasses, she slipped into the seat across from Logan. "You came," Logan said, his voice cold but steady. Samantha pulled off her sunglasses, revealing tired, red-rimmed eyes. "I had to. I owe you the truth." Emma studied Samantha carefully, searching for sincerity beneath her shaken exterior. There was fear in her eyes, but also guilt, a weight that seemed to press her down as she fidgeted with her hands. "Start talking," Logan said, his tone sharp enough to cut. Samantha exhaled shakily. "Ethan approached me months before your accident. He said you were reckless, that you'd ruin everything our family built. I didn't believe him at first, but then he showed me fabricated reports, documents he said proved you were embezzling money from the company." "That's absurd," Logan interrupted, his voice rising. "I know that now," Samantha said quickly, her voice breaking. "But at the time, I was scared. He convinced me that if I didn't help him, the board would find out, and the scandal would destroy the company. I thought I was protecting the family, Logan." Emma's jaw tightened as she listened. "And the accident?" she pressed, her tone firm but not harsh. Samantha's face crumpled, and tears spilled over her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Ethan said he'd pressure you into stepping down, make you look incompetent. But when you wouldn't bend, he escalated. I didn't know he planned to hurt you." Logan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "But you knew enough to stop it. And you didn't." Samantha's sobs deepened. "I didn't think it would go that far. When I found out what he'd done, it was too late. He threatened me, said he'd ruin me if I went to the police." Logan's voice shook with barely contained anger. "You're my sister. How could you choose him over me?" Before Samantha could respond, Emma stiffened. "Logan," she said in a low voice, her gaze fixed on the door. A man had entered, a hulking figure in a dark jacket who scanned the room before locking eyes with their table. He moved quickly toward them, his intentions clear. "Go," Logan commanded. Standing to shield Samantha and Emma, the three scrambled toward the back exit as the man pushed through the crowd. Outside, the alley was narrow and dimly lit, but Logan kept moving, Emma and Samantha close behind. "We're not safe here," Emma said breathlessly. Samantha clung to Logan's arm, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Logan. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Logan's jaw tightened as he led them toward his waiting car. "You'd better mean that, Samantha, because this isn't over." Behind them, the man emerged from the cafe, his phone to his ear. Whatever reprieve they'd gained was fleeting, and they all knew the danger was far from gone. The sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the dimly lit parking lot as Logan, Emma, and Samantha darted behind a parked car. The air was thick with tension, their breaths ragged as they crouched low to the ground. "They're not backing off," Logan said, his voice grim. Emma peeked around the edge of the car, her heart pounding as she spotted two men advancing with guns drawn. "We need to move now." Samantha clung to Emma's arm, her fear palpable. "I didn't know it would come to this," she whispered, her voice breaking. Emma's jaw tightened as she pulled Samantha behind her. "Whether you knew or not, you're in it now. Stay low and follow me." Summoning her courage, Emma made a dash toward a nearby pillar, motioning for Logan and Samantha to follow. Another shot rang out, the bullet ricocheting off the pavement mere inches from their feet. "Keep going," Logan urged, his voice strained as he shielded them both. They reached a utility exit, Emma slamming the door shut behind them. Logan immediately pulled out his phone, calling the police. Within minutes, sirens blared in the distance, but by the time the authorities arrived, Ethan's men had disappeared into the night. The parking lot was eerily silent again, save for the distant hum of traffic. Logan clenched his fists, the weight of the near-deadly encounter heavy on his shoulders. "This has to end," he said, his voice low and resolute. "No more running. No more waiting. I'm taking Ethan down." The Montgomery boardroom was packed, the tension almost tangible as Logan entered, his posture resolute despite the weight of recent events. Around the table, members of the board exchanged wary glances, their curiosity piqued by the extraordinary meeting Logan had called. Ethan sat confidently at the far end, his polished demeanor unwavering. "Thank you all for coming," Logan began, his voice steady but firm. "I've called this meeting to address critical issues affecting the company. Issues tied directly to Ethan Ward." Ethan leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Logan, we all appreciate your dedication, but this feels dramatic. Perhaps your recovery is affecting your judgment." Logan ignored the bait, clicking a remote to display files on the large screen behind him. "What you're about to see are irrefutable proofs of Ethan's betrayal. These emails, financial transactions, and the audio recording expose his efforts to sabotage this company. And me?" Murmurs rippled through the room as the evidence played out, each revelation landing like a blow. Logan then gestured toward the door. "And to corroborate this, we have a witness." Samantha entered, her face pale but determined. The room fell silent as she spoke, detailing her involvement and confessing Ethan's manipulation. Ethan's calm facade cracked, and he stood abruptly. "This is a farce," he shouted. "Logan's not fit to lead. He's paranoid, unstable." But the evidence was undeniable, and the board sat in stunned silence as Logan turned to them. "The choice is yours. This company stands for integrity, or it stands for nothing." The weight of his words lingered, the board now forced to act. The tension hung like a storm cloud, promising lasting consequences. The boardroom remained tense as Logan's evidence and Samantha's testimony hung in the air. Ethan's deflection attempts had lost their momentum, but Logan knew the final blow would require something more. Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding. This wasn't her world, yet the truth she held could change everything. She cleared her throat, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I need to speak," she began, drawing all eyes. "There's more to this story, and it's not just about the company. It's about the lives at stake." Emma recounted her encounters with Ethan's men, the veiled threats, and the suspicious movements she'd observed. Though exposing these details could put her career at risk, she spoke with unwavering conviction. These actions were not just unethical, they were dangerous. Logan's accident wasn't random. It was orchestrated. The weight of her words shifted the room's energy. The board members exchanged glances, their doubt replaced by a growing sense of urgency. Logan turned to the table, his voice firm but measured. To ensure the safety of everyone involved, I'm stepping back temporarily from active leadership. This isn't about me. It's about stabilizing this company and rooting out corruption. The board voted unanimously to remove Ethan, who stormed out, his fury palpable. This isn't over, he spat, glaring at Logan. You'll regret this. As the doors closed behind him, Logan exhaled deeply, his mind racing. They had won this round, but the threat still loomed. Emma placed a hand on his arm, her presence a reminder that while the fight was far from over, they weren't alone. Days passed, bringing a cautious calm to the Montgomery mansion. The once empty halls now bustled with activity as Logan's trusted allies worked tirelessly to rebuild the company and secure evidence against Ethan. Emma and Alex had taken up residence temporarily, finding a sense of safety within the mansion's well-guarded walls. In the study, Logan handed Alex an envelope. The teenager's brows furrowed as he opened it, revealing an acceptance letter from a prestigious tech institute, complete with a full scholarship. This is real? Alex stammered, looking up at Logan in disbelief. Logan smiled. It's real. You've earned it, Alex. Your skills are extraordinary, and you deserve the chance to grow them. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her gratitude evident as she placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. Thank you, Logan. You didn't have to do this. Logan shook his head. It's the least I can do. Alex has helped more than he knows. Meanwhile, in the West Wing, Samantha sat under house arrest, her movements restricted but her conscience driving her actions. She handed Emma a folder filled with documents. This is everything Ethan shared with me. Every deal, every name, Samantha said, her tone heavy with regret. It won't fix what I've done, but it's a start. Emma accepted the folder, her expression a mix of caution and acknowledgement. It's a step, she said. Later that evening, Logan received a call. The voice on the other end was firm. We've located Ethan, the officer said. Logan's jaw tightened. Where is he? As the details were relayed, the weight of the next move settled over him. The endgame was near. The air was thick with anticipation as the police operation unfolded. Officers surrounded an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, their movements precise and deliberate. Logan and Samantha watched from a safe distance in an unmarked car, their expressions tense. Emma sat beside them, her hands gripping the edge of her seat, her nerves frayed. He'll resist, Logan said, his voice low. Ethan won't go down quietly. Samantha glanced at him, guilt clouding her features. This is my fault. If I hadn't... Logan interrupted her, his tone firm but not unkind. We're here now. Let's end this. From their vantage point, they could see the officers moving in. The warehouse lights flickered on, illuminating Ethan and a small group of men scrambling to escape. Shouts echoed through the air, followed by the distinct click of handcuffs as the officers closed in. Ethan's composure cracked as he was dragged outside, his face contorted with rage. His eyes locked on Logan, and his voice cut through the noise like a blade. You think this is over? You'll never be safe, Montgomery. Not you, not her, not anyone. Emma tensed at the venom in his words, but Logan didn't flinch. He stepped closer, meeting Ethan's gaze with quiet resolve. It's over, he said simply. As the officers led Ethan away, the weight of his threats lingered in the air. But for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of justice, of a battle hard-fought and won. Emma exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Logan turned to her, his expression softening. It's done, he said, though they both knew the scars would remain. Together, they walked away from the scene, leaving the shadows of the past behind them. The Montgomery boardroom felt lighter than it had in years, as though a weight had finally been lifted. Logan stood at the head of the table, addressing his team with a newfound confidence. Today marks a new chapter for this company, he began. We've weathered storms, and now it's time to rebuild. With integrity, transparency, and trust. The people who stood by me will lead us into this future. The room erupted in applause as Logan announced promotions for long-time, loyal employees who had been sidelined under Ethan's influence. Their smiles reflected not just gratitude, but a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Emma found her own role shifting. Despite the chaos, she decided to stay on as a nurse, but now her work extended beyond Logan's recovery. She'd been offered a position managing health initiatives for the company's employees, a move that combined her expertise with Logan's vision of making the workplace a better environment for all. "It's a lot to take on," she admitted to Logan one afternoon, sitting across from him in the newly brightened office. "I can't think of anyone better for the job," Logan replied with a warm smile. Elsewhere in the mansion, Samantha quietly packed a few belongings. She had accepted her house arrest as part of her restitution but promised Logan, "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right." That evening, back in the kitchen, Alex grinned as he tossed Emma a bag of popcorn. "You realize we're finally safe enough to argue about something normal, like what movie to watch?" Emma laughed, catching the bag. "It feels almost boring." "Boring is good," Alex quipped. For the first time in weeks, the laughter in the room felt natural, the beginning of a new and hopeful chapter for them all. The evening sun bathed the Montgomery estate in a warm, golden light. From the balcony overlooking the garden, Logan stood beside Emma, both quietly taking in the serene view. The weight of the past few weeks had begun to lift, replaced by a tentative sense of peace. Emma leaned on the railing, her face touched by the fading sunlight. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It always was," Logan replied, his voice equally quiet. "But for a long time, I couldn't see it. I was too caught up in everything else to notice what was right in front of me." Emma glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "I think that happens to all of us. We get so focused on surviving that we forget to live." He turned to her, his green eyes steady. "You reminded me of that. You gave me something I didn't realize I was missing." Emma smiled, her cheeks warming. "I didn't do much. I just tried to help." "That's exactly it," Logan said, his voice tinged with emotion. "It's the small things, the kind words, the moments of trust. They matter more than we think. You didn't have to be here, but you stayed. And I'll never forget that." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the unspoken understanding between them deeper than any words. Inside, Alex's laughter echoed through the halls as he recounted a story to Carla, who was busy preparing dinner. The sound filled the once empty mansion with a warmth it hadn't known in years. Emma turned back to Logan, her voice soft but firm. "You have a chance to build something here. Not just a company, but a life. A family. And you'll do it, one step at a time." Logan nodded, his gaze drifting toward the scene inside. Alex, smiling and carefree, and Emma, standing by his side. It was a picture of something he'd never dared to dream of. Home. "I've spent so much time thinking about my legacy," Logan said, his tone reflective. "I thought it was my company, my wealth, but now I see it's more than that. It's the lives I can touch, the good I can do." Emma placed a hand on his arm, her touch light but grounding. "Then let's start there." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the warmth lingered, a promise of renewal. Logan, Emma, and Alex stood on the threshold of a new chapter, one built on trust, resilience, and the quiet power of kindness. And for the first time in years, Logan Montgomery felt truly whole.